All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some more trade news with the AFL to talk about today. This is like episode 69 or something. I've made so many of these, but again, this is the biggest AFL trade period of all time. So the grind don't stop, and I'm very happy that you guys are enjoying the videos. I really appreciate all the support and the comments that you guys have been giving me. Again, there is still a large number, though, who watch this video that are not subscribed to the channel. So again, it would make a chubby 5'8" fat kid very happy. I'm talking about me, of course. If you guys would leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a video hearing my somewhat majestic voice, and of course, put on the notifications. So I guess without further ado, we'll get straight into it. Again, Luke Parker has officially requested a trade to North. It has been said. I think this one will get done pretty comfortably. They are offering, I believe, like 2 to 3 years and solid midfield time, which we know that he just hasn't been able to get at the Swans. They've got one of the best midfields we've probably ever seen in the history of the AFL. When you've got the Swannies literally leaving out Callum Mills and Taylor Adams, which in hindsight may have been a mistake because they needed the clearance work, but them having the ability to do that just does show that this midfield is still really good, especially depth-wise. And a guy like Luke Parker has really just had to play forward at his time in recency, which just hasn't been that good at all. Again, he's actually done pretty well at it, but it's not good for him. He doesn't want to do it, and he wants to be a midfielder. The thing is, he now gets to go to a team in North Melbourne who have a relatively pretty good young midfield. I mean, having LDU in there, Sheasel, of course, being your two main ones. You've got Powell, of course. McKercher, I think, will play a lot more midfield in there. Wardlaw has become an absolute star in that midfield as well. A ton is going on there, but I think they're really looking for that veteran presence to play a lot of inside mid, to play a lot of wing, and I think Luke Parker is going to be that guy. Whether he starts on the bench or whatever it will be, he will play a lot of midfield for this North Melbourne team, especially over the next year or two. And then by the time he's like 33, he'll probably go back to playing forward again. But the reality is that Luke Parker will help this North Melbourne team in more ways than just disposal and clearance and all that type of stuff. He will add major leadership. Again, you're getting a former Sydney Swans captain who did it for like 4 years, I think, to add to an AFL team that has really struggled with leadership over the last couple of years. So this is overall a good move by North Melbourne, and it makes sense, and a good move by Sydney. They get something back for a guy who they literally had to play out of position. Again, there was a whole big thing about St Kilda recently as well. Ivan Soldo wants to get to St Kilda and they want him. Jack McRae, the Dogs apparently want more than pick 43, expected to be done on the final week of the trade period. And Tim Membry is unlikely to move to Melbourne, reports are saying, and Adam Tomlinson is still getting interest from Collingwood. The Saints are interested in him as well, and this will be really interesting to see, of course, because he's potentially going to be re-signing and whatnot. Sam Frost as well, he's going to remain a Hawk, which I think we all have seen. So a lot of St Kilda news coming out recently as well. They're definitely having one of their busiest trade periods in quite a while. They had a busy one a couple of years ago, and you can tell they're really trying to fix things and sharpen things, and I think try and improve to where they can try and contend for the 8 again next season. But we'll see how that goes and see how the Saints actually perform. Again, SEN also did a daily wrap actually showing that the GWS Giants are exploring a move for Jake Stringer. And we knew that Sydney were interested. At one stage, Collingwood were very interested. That seems to have cooled down a little bit. But as of this, we know that Jake Stringer wants a 2-year deal. Essendon aren't necessarily willing to offer that, so he's looking around. And we know that Sydney were super interested in him. And now it looks like GWS are being added to that list as a potential team he could also go and join. Again, it's also being said that Port Adelaide are refusing to do a deal with Carlton over Dan Houston. This is one of those ones that in the NBA, this would be called tampering, because in the NBA, you are not allowed to talk to players before they become like free agents and all that stuff, really. It's a whole big issue. It's a whole big thing. But in the AFL, you got teams actively talking to other players, managers, and agents who not only are free agents, but are players who were signed for a while. It's being said that Carlton have apparently been speaking to Dan Houston for like literally a year now, which is crazy to think that they have been trying to lure him out for that long and he is contracted. So Port Adelaide are very, very upset about this. I think they're kind of coming out and are saying that this is legit tampering and this is a issue that the AFL needs to address, and it's probably not going to be. So if they keep to their word and do not negotiate with Carlton, that rules out Carlton, it rules out St Kilda, and it rules out Melbourne. The only 3 teams now that he could go to are Collingwood, the Western Bulldogs, and I still think North Melbourne are chilling in the back there, and they are low-key waiting their turn and are very interested to see how this does unfold. Again, Collingwood, we know Harry Perryman, he did officially pick them. That is happening, so we can put, to bed the rumours that Port Adelaide were interested, that Hawthorn were slightly there in the background, and that GWS were actually thinking there was a massive chance he could actually re-sign. And again, we actually saw this, but Tom Morris went up to Dusty at the Richmond Best and Fairest night. One of the most awkward nights I've ever seen, knowing that all of these players are going to be leaving and half of them are winning the Best and Fairest at Richmond is so weird. Again, he actually went up to Dusty and asked him if he was retiring, and he said, "I'm happily retired, brother," which is just so Dustin Martin, I think. And yeah, I don't think he's going to Gold Coast. I still think this is such a weird thing, and if it does happen, it will probably be after the trade period where he'll be like a supplementary signing or whatever, like in a couple months. I don't think this is really happening at all. And then Tom Lynch was randomly asked as well if he is happy at Tigerland, if he is officially staying, where he said, "Yes, I will be here." I think even he was a little bit like perplexed at the question and was like, is this guy really asking me this? Like, I thought all of this was buried now. And of course, I'm going to be a Richmond Tiger next year. So again, if my eyes are looking a little squinty, my face is looking a little bit red, I've actually got the most major hay fever going on right now. I swear I've got a demon coming out of my nose and something trying to crawl its way out of my eyes. So if I look like I'm turning into an alien or something like that, please don't come in the comment section and say I've got like a bad reaction from getting fillers in my face or something like that. I don't know. I have not gotten any work done. I promised. I still look a bit mentally and physically disabled. So yeah, I don't quite have that Kardashian look about me right now. We've been hearing a ton out of the West as of late. Again, one rumor actually being said that Western Australian-based clubs are of the belief that it is his intention to return home at the end of next year. John Ralph talking about Sydney superstar Chad Warner. Again, Chad Warner remains contracted until the end of 2025, but both Western Australian clubs believe Warner will request a trade back to his home state by the end of next year. Again, this is super interesting. Like, if Sydney won the flag this year, I feel like everyone would have probably said, no, this is just a load of crap. None of this will ever happen. But the fact that there has been some issues, as of late with Sydney getting absolutely demolished. It's their second grand final in 3 years. They've got demolished in it. And it's just like a lot of people are really starting to talk and are starting to ramp up these discussions about what Chad Warner's future could actually be like. And it legitimately doesn't help that. I think it was in the Herald Sun the other day. Someone actually wrote about saying that the Sydney Swans' biggest problem is they have way too much star power and depth in their midfield and not enough depth for like barely any star power in their backline. So he actually proposed that losing Chad Warner would be a good situation because they could probably bring in like 2 first-round picks where they could go and bring in some very good young backmen to add to their defense. Again, I don't know if any of this is going to happen. I have a very big feeling that the money Chad Warner gets offered from Sydney and the guarantee of continuing to play finals and whatnot could be insane. Like, he is still so young to the point where he could probably get like a 10-year deal worth $13 to $15 million, making him one of the highest paid players in the AFL. Like, that's just the reality of things. We saw Mac Andrew get like a 10-year deal. I very much think that Chad Warner could easily be added to that list and get a huge, massive deal that no team can even match. And the reality is Sydney have kept their books so close and so tight and have managed it so well that I think they would probably be able to actually do this. Now, in terms though, if he was wanting to look around and move to a different, Western Australian team, who would that team actually be? Who would he pick? And in my opinion, I very much think Fremantle would actually not be the team Chad Warner picks. Again, it kind of adds to the problem that there is at Sydney, where they have so much depth in that midfield and their midfield's so elite, but Fremantle's backline isn't anywhere as good as what their midfield is, and that's probably the thing they should be focusing on at the moment. So again, I don't know how much Chad Warner really makes sense for Fremantle. They'll 100% come for him just because it's a big name and a big target that you definitely have to put the research in and actually look at. But as far as the West Coast Eagles go, this would be a great target for them, where they can, I think, actually look at this as a really positive thing and something that could definitely happen. Again, the West Coast Eagles are slowly getting better. They hired Andrew McQualter, who is a fantastic coach who will be very good for them. They're bringing in Liam Baker, who I think will probably play halfback for them, and people forget that when he's a halfback, he's like a top 10 in the league, so that will be a great move for them. They are probably going to be keeping their top, 3 pick that they will have, so they'll be able to draft a hopeful future star then. And again, they're bringing some depth players in like Jack Graham and continuing to add to this squad. And then when we look at next year, the thing is, there's a very big chance that they will try and keep their pick next year. Sydney will come very, very hard for it. But considering you might be able to trade like 2 to 3 years of picks in advance next year, I think Sydney could very well be like to, Fremantle, if you don't want to give us your top pick, we'll take your 2026 and 2027 first. And maybe they ask for a player back. And I think the, West Coast Eagles would definitely do that. They get to keep like another top 5 pick in 2025 and bring in Chad Warner. That team would start to actually look really good. So again, if anyone is going to go for Chad Warner, I feel like it's West Coast. And I also wonder if Sydney are going to look at Jeremy McGovern in a potential trade package here. And look, McGovern just came off All-Australian, and the reality is Sydney have come for McGovern like twice before, and they've come for him really, really hard. Pause. What the hell? So I wouldn't be surprised if, West Coast even said to Sydney, look, if we do this deal, we do want to do the first round picks, but if you guys really want Jeremy McGovern and McGovern wants to go there, maybe we can try and sort something out. So again, I'm not too sure if any of this is going to go down. This is like way looking into the future in the next year. We'll have to definitely wait and see, but I definitely feel like he's still a massive chance to re-sign, but I think West Coast will put in a massive offer for him. There's also another report here by Sam Edmund that says, I would say it's a reasonable chance to happen that Tim Kelly is playing for Freo next year. Again, we know that West Coast right now are trying to bring in picks, and they're putting players up for trade left, right, and centre as of late. I wouldn't be surprised if they offered to pay Tim Kelly's contract for like a year or two, and maybe even move him on. Like, this report I've been hearing mumblings about for a couple of weeks. I didn't know if any of it was true, but the reality is that Tim Kelly could very well be out the door, and Fremantle could get him pretty cheap. I mean, the thing is, as I said earlier, they probably do have too many midfielders at Freo as it is, and probably should be focusing on improving their backline. But Tim Kelly is still a good player. He is still a good depth piece. And if you could get Tim Kelly for an early second round pick and something else like that, I think the Freo Dockers would definitely consider it. Again, this is just a bizarre one that has come out of nowhere. Will it happen? Probably not, but it's still interesting at the end of the day. And the thing is, Tim Kelly went to West Coast to contend, and it didn't really happen. He also didn't exactly play like the greatest football there, and he's been good for them, but not anything that they expected, and not like what he was at the Geelong days. So I wonder if Freo do look at him and maybe have the observation, but again, I don't know if I really see this happen. This is just more of a fun one that has been chucked in out of nowhere, and I guess it's an interesting thing to talk about. Again, in terms of West Coast as well, as mentioned earlier, they have just pretty much acquired Liam Baker and Jack Graham, with both of them nominating West Coast, I should say, not West Coast, what the hell, as their club of choice, being so that Andrew McQualter's Richmond connections are already paying off, with Liam Baker and Jack Graham nominating to join the Eagles upon his announcement as coach. While Graham can walk as a free agent, the Eagles will need to trade to secure Baker. Again, Jack Graham will just walk to West Coast and they'll get him for free, and Richmond will get a early second round pick compensation, hopefully, for them. Could very well be like a mid of second round pick as well. And then for Liam Baker, as we know, the Richmond Football Club are in major negotiations for pick 13 right now from them, which they should be getting back from Hawthorn. Again, there's a lot of West Coast fans who are saying, we don't want to give that up for Baker. He's not worth that. We can just get him for free and walk him into the preseason. Well, unfortunately, that is not how that actually works. And first of all, Baker is worth pick 13. Again, I know he was okay in the midfield this year, but we got to remember he's a very good halfback. And the only reason he wasn't there this year is because the only good part about Richmond's game was their halfback. So they just needed him elsewhere to do better things in different spots. So that's pretty much what happened there. And also, Richmond have the first pick in the preseason. So yeah, if they wanted to pick Baker again, they easily could. Sorry to tell you, West Coast fans, and anyone who reports that, because it's very dumb and it doesn't make any sense at all. Of course, with some news to do with Essendon and a couple of players that they are potentially interested in. Again, a little bit ago on this channel, I did, of course, report that they were going to be interested in Finn McGuinness. But I wanted to talk about 3 recent players who were reported that Essendon could be interested in. First of all, there's Jackson Pryor from Brisbane, who has had a couple of Melbourne teams, I believe, actually circle him, as well as Josh Rotham from the West Coast Eagles. Again, Rotham is your solid, like, near key defender who I'm guessing Essendon will be wanting to look at for some type of depth. He's actually been on, I think, the Eagles list for like 7 years now at this point. So I'm not exactly too sure if that will actually happen. But the big one is the Bombers being interested in Tim Membry, which I think is significantly interesting considering we heard literally just a couple of days ago that the St Kilda Football Club very much expects Tim Membry to re-sign with the club. Again, by the time this video does come out, Tim Membry very well could have re-signed with the St Kilda Football Club, but it's no doubt that he is currently like out there putting interest away or moving interest to other teams, I should say, really trying to assess his market. Again, at one stage he was looking at the Demons, and now we've got him looking at the Bombers. And is the Bombers a good pick for Tim Membry? It's really hard to say, because I think where the Bombers are right now, you know, I was one of those guys who was actually really hyped on the Bombers. Again, you guys will recall I tipped the Bombers to make the 8 in 2024, and holy crap, was I wrong about that. And it's very obvious now, especially with how a lot of the reporters have spoken about them on SEN, that the Bombers do believe this might be a situation where they have brought in all the players they need to by free agency and trade. Now it's just them really needing to focus on the draft and play the young kids. Again, when a team is going to that belief, that usually means there is a semi-fall off coming. So where Essendon have been trying to contend for the 8 for the last couple of years, next year they may be finishing 14th or 15th. Again, I don't really know. It's really hard to say what the direction is with Essendon right now, but you saw them start to play a lot more younger guys by the end of the season, and I think that will be a directive for them next year, especially considering their team could not make the 8 with the more veterans that they had playing. So if we're going off that advice, that doesn't really make any sense for Tim Membry at all to go to Essendon. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a need for them, but with Harry Jones and Nick Cox playing a lot on the wing together this year, and I would say the experiment not necessarily working out that great. I do wonder if they continue with Nick Cox on the wing and move Harry Jones back up forward. If they do that, they've kind of got that spot that Tim Membry would come and replace in already filled out. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do go with this. Again, they're going to have a good pick in this year's draft. I think they've got a couple of academy players, like I forgot the guy's name, but they've got a really good small forward locked in by their academy who's supposed to be a top 15 pick. You can tell they're going to hit the draft and they're going to try and play these young players next year. I think Tim Membry just re-signs with St Kilda. I wouldn't even be surprised if by the time this video comes out, he already has. Again, I don't really know. I think he should re-sign with them, and I think Essendon should just go younger and realize that, yeah, it looks like they're not making the 8 anytime soon, at least for what it looks like, and maybe it's time for them to play some of those younger guys and try and draft well and continue to build around Caddy and, you know, Perkins, etc., etc. Of course, we've had a ton of Geelong news as of late as well. Again, Jack Martin did officially pick the Geelong Cats, with it being said that ex-Blue Jack Martin is heading to Geelong, I should say, after a positive medical screening with the Cats this morning. The Cats leapfrogged Fremantle as his preferred home in recent times as a delisted free agent. He will arrive at the Cats for nothing. Again, we also got the one that does say that Bailey Smith has officially requested a trade to Geelong. We know this is happening now. It's been said that long been on the cards, but now formally the 23-year-old midfielder has informed the Dogs of his intention to be traded to the Cats. Again, I think one really good move, one take it as it is move. Again, Bailey Smith to the Cats is a terrific move. Like, this is a great move by them. This is low-key an L by the Western Bulldogs, but they've already got too many midfielders. But in saying that, they have too many midfielders because they keep topping up with players like James Harms, who did not need to be on this team whatsoever. Not only has it forced Josh Dunkley out, who had to, for some reason, play as like a forward and a ruck at times, but now you're moving Bailey Smith out, who went from one of the best wings in the AFL, who politely asked Luke Beveridge if he could play some more midfield in the centre, and Luke Beveridge said, you know what, I like you on the wing, and I'm happy that you want to play some more midfield, but guess what, I'm going to put you as a forward pocket. Then he does his ACL, and now he's at the Cats. End of story. Yeah, I don't know what's going on at the Dogs right now. I think it's long evident that Beveridge, I don't think, should be coaching there for much longer. We'll see how that plays out in 2025. But the Cats, this is a great deal by them. Bailey Smith, again, was one of the best wings in the competition. He was statistically at one stage like the best wing in the competition, and he played inside midfield for a bit, looked really good, and you can tell he's going to go to the Cats and do that and be absolutely phenomenal. Like, he's going to be able to go there and be really good, and he's exactly what they need. In terms of Jack Martin, again, I don't think Jack Martin is that good of a football player. I haven't thought he was that good of a football player since he was at Gold Coast, and when Carlton offered him like the 700 or 800, whatever crazy overpay it was at the time, I remember looking at my wallet, sighing and say, Jordan, what does Jack Martin do other than be good at footy that you don't? And then I just realized, hold on, yeah, maybe he is actually okay, and he's not a Division 2 bench warmer like me, who probably deserves the money. But at the end of the day, maybe I was right, because Carlton ended up delisting him. They're trying to save some more salary cap to probably go after Houston. If that doesn't work, they'll look at other ventures in future years or whatever. But the thing is, Jack Martin wasn't getting a game at Carlton. He had struggled with a ton of injuries, and when he was back, they just didn't want to play him because he wasn't good enough. But at the Cats, it's an interesting one, because even though he wasn't good enough for Carlton, and he probably won't be for the Cats, they have had a lot of times where they have single-handedly revitalized, players' careers to an exceptional level, where they now get into that starting 22, starting 23, and actually find a role for themselves. Tyson Stengel being their last, major dramatic, great repurpose of a player that they've done. Jack Martin could very well be that, or he could just be a depth player, which, again, there's a lot of low risk, high reward, I think, situation about this. The other one with Geelong, I spoke about it in a previous video, and I'll talk about it more now, and probably talk about it a bit later on. But yeah, Clayton Oliver, he did meet with Geelong, being reported by Sam McClure. Again, I'll go over more on that later, but yeah, it's a good move by the Cats overall, and it makes sense, especially if you can get like Clayton Oliver back to his best. I mean, if you get a good Clayton Oliver back to his best, it literally will feed families, because this guy was once upon a time one of the best players in the AFL. Now there's just pictures of him on like Reddit at the pokies, so go figure, right? Again, we got a new daily wrap by SEN as well for the 3rd of October, a couple days before this video comes out, but we'll talk about some stuff here. Again, we know Luke Parker has requested a trade to North Melbourne. Tim Kelly has had a shock link to Fremantle, which kind of came out of nowhere. The Crows are set to pursue Sam Draper at the end of 2025. That is literally like really good news, I think, for Adelaide. Very bad news for Essendon, because even though Todd Goldstein is low-key kind of a better player than what Sam Draper is at the moment, I don't know if how much longer Goldstein's got left in him. We say this every year, he's probably got only a year left in him, and he just keeps coming back and doing well. But again, this year there were times where he genuinely looked like gassed and tired and all of the above. Sam Draper's a really good player. I still think he's levels above Riley O'Brien. I've never been that big of a Riley O'Brien fan, and I remember when he won Adelaide's Best and Fairest, I remember thinking that was crazy, and there were some Adelaide fans who were so hype on him, some Adelaide fans weren't. Flash forward a couple years later, and this guy's getting dropped in a team that's finishing like 15th. So there are definitely signs that maybe they need to furthermore upgrade. How much of an upgrade is Sam Draper over Riley O'Brien? That will be up to, I guess, you as the viewer, you as the fan to ultimately decide. I'm not exactly too sure. But yeah, from all reports as well, Sam Draper is actually really happy in Melbourne. And the funny thing is that this was reported on SEN as well. It could very well look like that. If Sam Draper is happy in Melbourne, could we be not looking at the bigger picture here in terms of, yes, Adelaide are interested because that's his home team, but could other Melbourne clubs come, heavy for him? Again, I'll put this on the agenda real quick. This is not being reported by anyone, but in terms of the Victorian clubs maybe coming for him, one that I low-key do suggest is the Richmond Football Club. Again, when we look at the Tigers are going to want to be doing certain things, and if they're going to bring in free agents in the next couple years, they might not want to overly expend a lot of money, right? The thing is with Sam Draper, he's a good ruckman, and Toby Nankervis after 2025 will probably only have like 1 year left at the Tigers. And I say that not because he's too old or anything, he's like going to be 30 years old or whatever, but I think, and I believe everyone in Richmond's probably looked at this in terms of there is a probably 90% chance Toby Nankervis will go to Tasmania on like a 2-year deal and will literally play there for, I think, a couple of years. And I don't know if he'll be their captain, but GWS had great, I think, success with what they did and bringing in veteran players like Luke Power, who they made their captain for like 1 year, bringing these veteran players in to be leaders and mentors and help out their team. I think Toby Nankervis is definitely one that Tassie will probably pay like a lot of money just to get out of Richmond again. Low-key was one of the better ruckmans of 2024. Will probably continue to do that in 2025. There were times where Toby Nankervis was a top 5 ruckman for the Tigers. They could very well be expecting him to leave in 2027 and beyond. So in 2026, a team like Richmond, I think, could come hard for Sam Draper and be like, look, we want to get this guy in, or end of 2025, they'll probably go after him. We want to get this guy in. We think he can play ruck with Toby Nankervis for 1 year, and then Nank will probably go. And now we have our ruckman, hopefully semi for the future, and can continue going down that road? I don't really know. That's just a big theory and fan suggestion by me, but I think a lot of Victorian teams are probably going to go after Sam Draper. This is really interesting. I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. Subscribe to this channel for latest sports content and news. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Also, subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlogging channels. Links for them will be in the description down below. And I guess I will see you guys next time.